Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate you guys tuning in. It is a rainy, cold day here in New York City when I'm recording this, but I appreciate you being here as always. On the show today, comedian, actress, voiceover artist, violinist, all around just Renaissance woman, Rachel Green. This was one of the best chats I've had on the show. This was really, really great. And the adventures that she's had, and we get into some really, really interesting, fascinating stuff. Like just when we talk about the things that drive you into being a performer and the things like the events and experiences that you have that push you to saying that the life that you studied and has been prescribed to you is not the life that you need or the life that you want. So it was really great to get to chat with Rachel. And if anybody's like an aspiring comedian or a voiceover person, I talked to her quite a bit about that towards the end of the show. She also has a monthly show at the Village Lantern here in New York City in the East Village, and she plugs that at the end. And I might have a bit of a treat for you folks, where we get to hear some of Rachel's music. So hold on till the end of this one. So I appreciate you folks for being here. Another quick plug: I'm going to be doing a co-headlining show with Tyler Richardson at the People's Improv Theater, February 26th. Tickets are $7, and I will have a link for that in the description. And thank you again for being here, folks. And let's go to my chat with Rachel Green. Actress and Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah, I was gonna say
keeps coming up. I found you eventually. I did find you though.
Yeah, if you put in like Rachel Green comedy or Rachel Green violin, that usually works. But obviously, you figured that out.
Yes.
So.
No. The violin. I want to talk about that too, because it was a surprise to learn that you were playing violin in like one of my favorite local country bands.
I know, that was so awesome. You guys came to the show too. Yeah.
Oh, it was such a good show. I'd never been to that venue, but that's such a great space.
Was that the Rockwood show?
Yes.
Oh, I love it.
I'd never performed there, but it's just seems like such a perfect place to do a show.
It's awesome. The sound is great. The people that work there are lovely. It's just it's a nice layout for people to be comfortable and either sit or dance or hang by the bar. You have a lot of options.
Yeah, which is for a music venue, I feel is like the perfect kind of space. So you want people to be able to move freely.
Absolutely.
Which is, I thought briefly about before I had gone there, about trying to do a stand-up show there, but then I went there and I was like, no, this is just too perfect. We can't have comedy in here. Just because I feel like the perfect venue for a lot of other forms of performance is like a bad venue for stand-up sometimes.
The thing is, you could probably do it in the smaller room because they have 3 rooms. You could probably do it in one of the smaller rooms. The bigger room, you'd have to pack the house for it to feel right. Yeah. And you'd have to have at least 50 people. So, but the smaller rooms actually might work.
Spectacular. I like comedy in a nice small room, whereas it's often quite like a nice fire hazard kind of room. Like any room that feels like death, like if an emergency happened, that like it would be a bad situation.
I was there recently when the fire warden came to the lantern and shut down the downstairs part.
Oh, they did?
I was like, oh God, come on.
Oh, geez.
It was comical because he was like, I was like, sir, because I was supposed to do the 10 o'clock and the 12 o'clock show. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's not happening. And I was like, if you don't mind me asking, what's the
problem?
What's the violation? He goes, it's illegal to have a comedy club in a cellar. And I started laughing. See, you get how funny that is.
well, because literally every comedy club is in a basement, and there's even a comedy club around the corner called the Comedy Cellar.
I know, I lost it. And I was like, sir, seriously, you do realize that 90% of the comedy clubs in New York are in basements.
Yes.
And he was like, well, some of them are legal and some of them are not. I've shut down plenty in my time. Like, he was very proud of himself.
Seems like a really supportive, like, if he's got a kid, I bet he's really supportive of their dreams.
It just, I mean, I get it. You want people to be safe. And I guess with the fire in Oakland, maybe that have, sparked something. I don't know.
I think so.
So, that's but I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I said, how do you know about it? He said, well, someone complains. So then you get into like, okay, well, is this like drama in between comedy clubs? And at the end of the day, it's like not even worth it to go down that path, because it's like we all just want to, venues to perform in. So
exactly. That's the whole reason that you live in New York, is that there are tons of venues to perform at. If New York doesn't have that, then are we all going to move to Los Angeles, or God forbid, try to build up our local scenes?
Right. Exactly. Because everyone wants to come up to Harlem to come see comedy.
Exactly.
Or Woodside, right? Yeah,
Woodside. Or, I used to, during Hurricane Sandy, me and my old roommate Kevin Frolix used to have a show in this room. It was his room, and now it's mine. So we have done that, and then Harlem, I remember. It probably still, I don't know if it exists anymore, but Cafe Addis. You ever perform there?
Oh, is that like an Ethiopian place?
Yes, on 125th, like a couple blocks from the Apollo.
Oh.
I don't know if it exists anymore, but I would do open mics there. I would have had a couple of pretty good shows there.
Interesting. No, I mean, there is some spots up there. There's Gin Fizz has like a Monday night show, and I think Mocha has a Monday night show.
I've heard of Mocha.
Yeah, I haven't checked them out. I guess I could. They're considered urban. Mm-hmm. Whatever that means.
Right. I think it just means like the way I think of, if someone tells me they're going to go do a urban room or a hood room, I just view that as a show where you have to bring your A shit and you can't like dilly dally, because
it's like the Apollo.
Because in my experience, black audiences do not have time for you to stumble through your process on stage.
Who does, though? But I get what you're saying.
Well, I've heard like people describe like San Francisco as a little more open to like noodly sort of on-stage explorations. Like if you're trying to like figure out a bit. Like, do you ever do? I don't know how you work necessarily, but like, you ever go on stage with just like an idea and hope that a bit happens from when you start talking to when you stop?
Yes, but not often. I usually either do that at a mic, or I do it quickly in the midst of a bigger set that I know everything else is lined up. But usually I try to work it out as much as possible, because I don't know, I value people's time. Same. Sometimes I do go up with an idea and maybe just, play a little bit with like the button or the punchline.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a New York City thing, especially because we're all just living stress-filled time premium. Time is a premium.
Yeah.
More than anything, so you got to learn to be. So I have it in my head. It's like, be efficient. If you can tell 5 jokes in like 30 seconds, and then.
Yeah. Although it is really nice when you can just sit back and like enjoy. And I feel like my sets are more successful when I allow the audience more space to laugh. I
think so.
4 jokes with breath and laughter rather than like 5 and I cut them off, because then, it doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't. But I get I totally fall into that trap where I'm like, okay, I have to try like 6 jokes tonight and squeeze.
Right. Well, I think why that works for you, and I don't know you super well, but like you have this sort of like open, like inviting, bubbly personality on stage, where I feel not that there aren't jokes there, but you're like having more of a combo with the audience, whereas I come up and I feel like everyone views me as kind of a freak already because I'm like 8 feet tall. And then I have this like super super low voice. And then I just have these sort of like absurd observations or these sort of like what the fuck kind of autobiographical stories. So I feel like I have to. I don't think I'm skirting by on my personality very often.
I think you're awesome.
Thanks, Rachel.
I like your kind of quirky, sometimes deadpan style. I think it's very cool. But
thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that. So,
yes.
So I briefly mentioned bringing up our local scenes. What would be your local scene? Like, where did you grow up, first of all?
Long Island.
Long Island. What part?
It's a place called Melville.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's technically in the town of Huntington and next to Dix Hills. So it was an interesting place to grow up. Like elementary school was primarily white, but then middle school and high school was very diverse because you had a mixture of middle income as well as very affluent and then low income. So you could, it kind of all got smushed together, which I was very thankful for.
Right.
Because you kind of, get to meet lots of people.
Yeah. Kind of experience something that's outside what you're living at home.
Yeah. Because, I remember growing up at, a lot of the kids I was friends with were like rich, like really super rich. And I guess it, gives you one point of view when you're not the rich kid. My parents are musicians. They're both French horn players. So
cool.
it was we did okay, but like my dad was on Broadway. So when that ended, it was like, there were some tough times, my mom was like a school teacher. And so it was like, oh, well, why do they have a pool and I don't? And it's still, as an adult, I'm like, oh, first world problems, shut up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you definitely these kids would have these grandiose bat and bar mitzvahs, where their parents were like, it was basically like the equivalent of a wedding. And my parents were like, we can't do that. And I was like, that's cool. Let's just have some friends and fam in the backyard with some like Italian food because we're not that religious anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That seems like the more fun experience to be.
Yeah, totally. And then we were like, all right, let's take a little, and then they took me on a cruise. So that was awesome.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, that's much better.
I wasn't like starving. We were fine. But it was really cool. In middle school, being just exposed to more than that,
Like what were some of the things that were like blowing your mind at that time?
In middle school?
Yeah, like what's like, because when I think of Long Island, I have this very closed-minded view of what Long Island is like. It's either I either view it as this very quaint, all-American existence, or I just view it as like snorting creatine powder and listening to OAR.
There's both of those things. Well, it was kind of like, I guess the stages that I went through, like elementary school, I was a little bit of like a teacher's pet. I was a really smart, kind of like prodigy like kid, getting straight A's and playing violin and doing all that. And then middle school, like 7th grade, I went to horseback riding camp.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm from rural Maryland. I know about riding horses.
Okay. All right. So, but I was a very curious kid. So I met a girl there and I met a girl in middle school. And, one girl was like, the girl at horseback riding camp, she was like, "Are you a straight edge?" And I was like, "What's a straight edge?" And she was like, you don't drink or smoke or do drugs. And I was like, "Oh, of course not. No, I'm cool. I do everything." Meanwhile, I was like, pretending to smoke cigarettes and like drinking amaretto in the woods. And then I became friends with this other girl, and then that started like the baggy jeans phase. And
so
listening
she
to
was
hip hop. Yeah.
So was was she like a punk rock kind of girl?
So yeah. So Dana, the straight edge one, she was more like Violent Femmes, 9 Inch Nails, like the cure.
I know that girl. I have a friend like that. It's very important in my existence.
Green hair, you know, the whole thing. And so like she was awesome, but then I also had this friend that was more of like what you might call like a chola, you know, that's more like a little gangsta bee, you know. And so yeah, I would just, you know, I got a lot of, you know, and of course both ladies were, you know, very sexually ahead of themselves, and I kind of followed right down that path. And yeah,
you've got your crew of burgeoning adolescents.
Yeah, hanging out at the mall, hanging out in Burger King, smoking cigarettes.
Absolutely.
You know, hanging with the boys. Yeah, so that was great. And then, you know, it progressed into, you know, you start driving and you hang out in parking lots and smoke blunts and drink 40s and whatever else you can get your hands on. Typical suburban kind of, you know.
Yeah. Because you need to do that in suburbia because you have to learn that you don't want to stay in suburbia.
Right. And, you know, trying all sorts of drugs, you know, dabbling in like, you know, acid and mushrooms and.
Exactly.
Nowadays they snort heroin. I never did that, but I definitely did like acid, shrooms, you know, weed,
shrooms,
dust, angel dust.
Which one of those like. Because I didn't do anything until I was like 20. And then the first time I did mushrooms, I was like, ooh, I really like this. Like, and I'll just tell you like really quickly. The first time I did mushrooms, me and a bunch of my other comedian buddies did mushrooms, got on, watched the stars suddenly start moving around the sky, and then got the idea that we should go see the Avengers in 3D. And so we go into the L train, and this is like, I was like trying not to laugh because I was like, I have a secret nobody knows. And we got to the movie theater, and before the movie started, I remember I couldn't pronounce Sidney Pollack's last name, and it was the funniest thing ever.
That's amazing.
Right. Like I was, a part of me was like, okay, am I going to see stuff that's not there? But no, and then like I felt like literally no anxiety for like the first, maybe one of the rare instances of no anxiety since I'd been in New York. Because when I moved to New York, I've been in a constant grind of am I working hard enough? Do I have enough money? If I don't do 15 open mics this week, that means I'm never going to be on Comedy Central. Like that whole insane spiral of thinking.
I've been moving away from that paradigm in the past 6 months personally, but I know it well.
Same here. I've decided I'm going to be controlling my own destiny, and then that just takes a lot of the load off. So you got the edgy girlfriends. And do you have any experiences like that with like mushrooms or acid? I've never done acid, so I don't know what it's like.
I remember one time I thought I was really smart and took some mushrooms and got in my car and drove to Manhattan. Yeah. Oh. And so there was the lights from the dashboard turned into a dancing paper doll family dancing across my dashboard. But it was fine. I mean, I was still able to drive. They were just kind of dancing with the music.
Like, oh, nice. Well, with the music.
Yeah,
like
which
that.
is probably like Biggie Smalls at the time, you know, something like that.
So you were like a hip hop. Would you describe yourself as like a hip hop girl? Or?
Yeah, I definitely was. Definitely had my little hip hop thing. Love 90s hip hop and R&B.
Like Fugees, Lauryn Hill.
Lauryn Hill, B.I.G. Biggie, Nas, Mary J. Blige, Method Man, Wu-Tang, that whole thing. You know, like some conscious rappers like Common and Mos Def and all that stuff.
Awesome. And what about that music was speaking to you? Was it because it was new? Was it or was it? I imagine it was different if you were growing up Italian in Long Island. I can't imagine.
I'm Jewish. I'm not Italian.
You're. I apologize.
Honestly, on Long Island, it's basically the same thing.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It's like food and guilt. Lots of food, lots of guilt.
Mm-hmm. My girlfriend is half Jewish, half Irish Catholic. So I will.
Oh.
So but I like, the guilt's always like, it's always like after the food, but the food is good enough that I'll be there for the guilt too.
Yeah, I grew up, there's a lot of Jews and Italians on Long Island, and lots of pizza bagels, as we would call them.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean, I'm an amalgamation of Eastern European, Jewish. Yeah, but, generations have been here. But I don't know, I think it was, a lot had to do with the people I was hanging out with. Mm-hmm. I just appreciated that whole aesthetic, kind of like the TLC.
Uh-huh. Sort of like what's the word I want to use to describe this? I don't want to say edgy, but just sort of like maybe non-traditional suburbia.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I consciously thought about it at the time, but I definitely was a pretty rebellious teenager. I was always, trying to be older than I was, and I always looked a little bit older. I carried myself older. I had older friends. So it just kind of went with that whole thing. Yeah. And I mean, the hip hop that was back then had a lot more music in it. And the words, in my opinion, had a lot more thought. I mean, it's not like, all of it was conscious, but yeah, I loved it. And I still love it to this day. I don't really love the hip hop that's out there now.
No, me neither. For like, and I'm showing my age here, but like the rap that I was listening to, I like, I would listen to like stuff that I know now is not considered like critically acclaimed. Like I went through a big like horrorcore phase, which is like basically a lot of like white dudes from the Midwest who love like horror movies who become rappers.
Thank you for the explanation.
And I also love nerdcore, which is like a bunch of white kids who like really into Lord of the Rings and English majors, and that becomes rap music.
That's amazing. I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh, okay. All right. I gotta go on a quick sidebar. You gotta look up this guy MC Lars. At least he's got one song where he retells Moby Dick in a rap song. He's got one song where he retells Hamlet. He's got his most recent album is called Zombie T-Rex. Where he's got a song about zombie T-Rexes who invade San Francisco, and then the dinosaur caves become gentrified and affect local coffee markets. And then one of the more famous guys is MC Chris, who wrote a song about Boba Fett, who the reason he's a bounty hunter is because he has to pay for his Corvette, and it's called Fett's Vet. That's the
wow.
That's the rap music that I'm familiar with. But most like what's popular on the rap charts nowadays, it just feels. I've said this. There are several rappers who the vocal style I describe as like Novocaine, like
numbing.
Yeah, all the words just kind of like fall out of their mouths like they just came from the dentist.
Oh, they sound like they took some Novocaine. Got it.
Yeah, and the beats are sort of like it's like not a straight 4/4 beat. It's like a 1/8.
Yeah. Ugh.
It's like it just does make me want to nod my head or start the revolution.
Yes. No. I agree. Yes.
Yeah. So you're a hip hop girl. I'm wondering what this is like. So you have classic and you have French horn playing parents.
Yep.
And you said your mom was a school teacher also? My mom was a school teacher also. What's your relationship with them when you're going through when you're discovering yourself in the throes of
we didn't like each other from like when I was like 12 till about 15.
Oh no.
My mom's famous quote is, I always loved you, but I didn't like you.
It seems like I hate to stereotype, but that sounds like something that only like a Jewish mom would
it's
say.
Very Jewish mom. It's awful. Yeah, it's kind of like I think because I was a smart kid and my parents wanted the best for me, they held me to sometimes ridiculously high standards. I think that's pretty prevalent in, from my experience, Jewish families and stuff. I'm sure it happens in other cultures as well. But
absolutely. And if your mom's a school teacher, she definitely does.
Oh yeah, just on top of everything else. So yeah, so then, here I am trying to rebel basically and wanting to like hang out and do stuff, and she's like trying to clamp down on the rules. So it was, a lot of push and pull.
Right.
And then, but even if I was like drinking or smoking or whatever I was doing, I was still getting straight A's. And and I was still playing classical violin. So I sat.
How long did you do that?
I started playing violin when I was like 3.5. Did the Suzuki method, which is super rigid. So did that for 6 months and I think, every week I'd get a gold star, and one week I got like a silver star, and then it was all over. I was crying every week. It was done. So I took a hiatus from 4 to about 8. And then they offered violin or string instruments to, kids who had decent grades. So I decided to pick it up again, and I've been playing ever since. And so by the time I was about 16, I was kind of sick of lying to my parents and fighting with them. And I was just like, ugh, stop. And so I sat them down and I was like, look, I still get straight A's. I practice my violin. I'm in freaking honor society. How about I just tell you what I'm doing so I don't have to lie to you? And, if I'm intoxicated, I'll sleep at my friend's house so I don't have to drive. And then, at that point they were like, oh, okay. Cause I had already started going to clubbing. I was like a club kid. I started being a club kid at probably at 16. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So like Prodigy and like other EDM kind of stuff, or?
Well, I used to go to like the Tunnel and the Palladium, and so it was a mix. So, so you'd have one room that was technically probably more house music, and the other room would be like hip hop, and maybe you'd even have a reggae room, and so I'd kind of float back and forth. Sometimes there was techno. Like if you went to the Tunnel was huge. So you had like one room had like, we didn't call it EDM back then. We called it like techno, So you'd have techno, you'd have house, and then you'd have like hip hop and reggae.
Yeah. And you need a reggae room to cool down after a while.
Or
relax.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't.
I don't know about cooling down. It's probably the hottest place in there.
That's the first place my mind goes, because I'm at a point where like any sort of live music experience becomes like a fight for. On some level, I want to enjoy the show. But on the other level, I'm sort of like fighting like my body's desire to just collapse. So like I would think, if I'm thinking practically about like, get like a couple hardcore hours of like techno dancing in, and I'm illustrating techno dancing by just moving my hands in an up and down motion. And
it's totally techno dancing.
And then, reggae, because I imagine reggae is sort of like a slower groove. So you could relax with that.
I'm messing this up.
Oh, it's okay. You could move it. You could just move it down if you want.
There we go.
There you go.
I'll try not to over enunciate my P's.
You're good. I think this is going great. I hope you think the same.
No, this is fun.
So you start clubbing. Do you have any thoughts of like where? And this is high school age still?
Yeah. I started clubbing when I was like 16. And I clubbed a lot until I was about 23. Yeah.
And at what point? What's the dream? You're clubbing. You're listening to hip hop. You're doing acid. Super cool. I could feel how cool I would think you are if we knew each other in high school. At that point,
it was a lot of like smoking blunts and taking tequila shots. But yeah, occasionally throw some acid in there. But
absolutely. What's the dream at this point?
Oh, I think back then I thought I was going to be one of the first white female rappers. I was definitely feeling that. I used to smoke blunts and freestyle in my Subaru, my gray Subaru. Well, I guess it was silver. My silver Subaru station wagon that I had put tinted windows on.
Nice.
And installed subwoofers and had a nice weed sticker on the back. I wasn't asking for it at all. Yeah.
Not at all. Gotta have that weed sticker. I can see it. So first white Jewish rapper from Long Island.
Yeah, I think that was it. I always loved playing the violin, and I actually was quite disciplined. I mean, I did state, competitions and things.
Right. What's the Suzuki method? I just know it's like the only thing I have in my mind about it is that it's like the boot camp violin.
That's a great way to put it. It's just a very rigid methodology of teaching kids how to play string instruments, or maybe just instruments in general, but it's associated mostly with strings. And it just follows a very specific regimen, and it's like if you go outside of the lines at all, it's just they're like, no. I mean, it's Suzuki. I mean, it's Asian, so it's that very, not to stereotype, but I'm stereotyping. It's
very precise.
It's very precise. Everything is just very technical, very, it has to be this way. Whereas, a more Western style of teaching an instrument would be that the teacher kind of gets a feel for where the kid is at and gives them scales and pieces based on what they feel the kid likes. And then it's more organic, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I told my therapist about like the stupid like star system, and she like practically fell out of her chair. She's like, that's awful. You know what I mean? Because it's like kids are so sensitive and they're so malleable when they're little that it's like you give kids a star for doing it. Yeah, you think you're doing a great thing, but then, 1 week you don't give them a star, you give them a purple star, and it's like the end of the world for them, and...
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I know that this is something that's kind of harped on by some comics and some people on the radio, where they talk about the whole like participation trophy generation, but those people were. I feel like those people were just as broken as well. They were by their parents. They're just reacting to it slightly differently.
Yeah.
The way I would almost compare it to like, I was just talking to Eli Sayers actually, and we were comparing like how he gravitated more towards like angry punk rock and metal, and I gravitated more towards like pop punk and like acoustic rock, where it's like, oh, so you were a little more angry and I was a little more sad. So it's gonna. I feel like that sort of thing that you just described would possibly set a kid on either one of those paths,
right?
While also setting up this idea of like goal-based achievement, which there's a good side which I know there's good sides to that,
of course,
but I also feel that there's the dark side of that is where you get those like hyper type A personalities who like freak out if they get a 3.9, and then just like gotta like just gotta like Sarah McLachlan it up for a little while. I've never used her name as a verb, but I feel like it.
All I think of is like dying dogs.
I wonder how she feels that her legacy to an entire generation is just sad animals. Just so many sad animals over her music.
Well, she's on it, so she must know. She's okay with that being part of her brand, I guess.
That's I suppose so. Because I'm a big proponent of the theory of multiple intelligences. Like I feel like there are a lot of people that are very smart, but not all smart the same way.
Oh yeah.
Like the goal should be you got to find out how that kid is smart, and you just got to encourage the shit out of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was lucky that I did, have a lot of teachers in elementary school that did kind of get that, and like,
that's good.
Gave me really interesting books to read because they saw that like, oh, Rachel is like a little bit ahead of the curve, and she'll be happier if she's, her brain's a little stimulated. But yeah, I guess at the end of the day, you're gonna like interpret shit one way or another. However great or crappy your parents are, right? It's just kind of human nature to like make decisions about life to, kind of protect yourself in the moment, and then you kind of
process later,
outgrow them, and you're like, wait, that doesn't really serve me anymore. So yeah, I guess it's just human nature. But yeah, no. So that was the Suzuki versus Western, and yeah, that's yeah.
So you're in this really regimented system, but you're also super disciplined. You're going to be the first white rapper.
Yeah, I mean, I think somewhere I thought maybe I would like still play the violin, so maybe I would be like a rapper violinist or something like.
You can still do that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, of course, anytime people hear that I do comedy and I play the violin, they're like, that has to be possible. And I'm like, yeah, it's totally possible. But, it would have to be in like a one-woman show format. I'm not going to get up and somehow finagle a violin into an 8-minute set. That's...
No, I agree with you. I play guitar, and people always say, "Oh, you ever think about combining two?" And I'm like, "Well, I can't really write. I can't really write funny songs."
I used to do cabaret before anything else. It was kind of, well, I guess it morphed. It was like violin, then spoken word, then singer songwriter, then cabaret, then musical theater, then like now, then TV and film, and then now, comedy. Fiddle. Yeah, I'm all over the place. But anyway, so
I'm going to see how we get to that. Where did you go to college?
Boston University.
Nice. So you get out of, so you're like, where are you like, I got to get out of Long Island for a little while?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everyone thought I was going to go to NYU because I've always been like a quote unquote city kid. But Boston gave me a lot more money. They gave me grants and scholarships and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be you.
Spectacular. What'd you major in?
Finance.
Now that doesn't fit the narrative I've created in this.
Well, I should say sometime between like the female rapper thing and whatever, my pragmatic parents played a part. And I think there was a part of me that was like, I want to make a lot of money because somehow you think money equals happiness,
Right. And it's also better for the rap music.
Right,
later
exactly.
On.
I could talk about like my cheddar and like, whatever. So
for reals.
Quote the stock market. So I was a finance major, but I hated it. I got through it. I survived it.
Yeah.
But all the while I was still playing violin, and that's when I started doing spoken word.
At Boston University?
I mean, like, up in like Cambridge and Jamaica Plain and, bopped around the scene over there. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Boston. I've been there a couple of times. I really enjoy that city.
It's a fun little town. It's a great place to go to college because there's college kids everywhere. I didn't realize that I was a hardcore New Yorker till I moved to Boston. And then I was like, oh. But then it grew on me. You find the little areas like Allston and Brookline and Jamaica Plain and, Cambridge and Harvard Square and like all these cool places that you can kind of hang out and be cool as opposed to like,
Exactly.
Because Boston can be really provincial,
Oh yeah, no, like I'm blanking on any of the neighborhoods, but yeah, like the rich parts of Boston, I'm like, oh, like I just feel like I'm not even from here, and I immediately feel like Southie trash because this is just like because it's just so like pristine. Because I feel like Boston as a whole manages to be cleaner on more consistently than New York does.
Yeah.
So like the really rich parts, I'm like, ooh, is someone going to charge me money for being here? Compared to like what you were saying, the kind of cool college areas that have like the bars and the live music and so spoken word.
Yeah.
Tell me about beginning in spoken word.
Well, I had kind of, I had taken some poetry classes in school, in high school and college. And so I did have an interest in it. And, spoken word is kind of like halfway between poetry and hip hop. And I liked both things. So I was like, So I started, and it was right around the time that I think they were coming out with like Def Poetry Jam. And it was buzzing. And I was like, this is interesting. So the first time I got up and did spoken word was actually the summer before my senior year. And I was hanging out with this guy at the time, and he had been doing it already. And we met up and did it here at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe.
I know that place.
And, you get up on stage, like, and if it's your first time, they're like, virgin. And I was like, oh God. But, it was like a rite of passage, if you will,
Sure.
So I did it, and then I kind of was like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. That was okay. And then I went back up to Boston and just started writing more and more, and then would do a spot up there called the Lizard Lounge that had a really cool, spoken word night. And I was part of a group called the Gorilla Poets. We would perform poetry in like downtown Crossing and like in the park and stuff. And then I would come back to New York, and I would do it whenever I was here, and I would talk about everything from politics to figuring out my life's purpose to erotic stuff. Because my senior year of college, it was super kind of soul searchy, and I had gotten a lot of my finance electives out of the way, so I was taking like classes in metaphysics and like philosophy and just really cool death and mysticism and Jewish mysticism. I was just like, my mind was just, I studied Reiki. I became a Reiki master.
What's that?
I can do energy healing with my hands.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm like a conduit for that kind of stuff. So it was just a huge, thanks. It was like a huge year of like, I was like, I'm going to do the Peace Corps. And my mom was like, no, you're not. I was like, okay. And then I would, write poems about that. And it was great. And I mean, I came back here and I started in my finance world. I worked at Arthur Andersen, and
that is one of the firms I've heard of. They went bankrupt after Enron, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, my second day of work was 9/11.
Holy shit. So you graduate from college, you get this job at Arthur Andersen. Day 2 is 9/11.
Yeah.
Holy shit. What happened?
And there was a great summer too. I mean, I did like Birthright Israel. I went to Israel, and I backpacked around Europe by myself for like a month and a half. So, I was still like, just mind exploding. And then it was like, boom, corporate America, boom, 9/11, boom, Enron. And I was like, what's my life about?
Ooh, that's a hard summer. That's a hard series of events. Because to go from, I've not traveled to Israel. I haven't been to Israel yet. It's on the list. But to go from that and then all these other places in Europe, which again, I imagine new shit. Same way I imagine when you're hearing hip hop back in the day. Mine's just exploding like it's 4th of July. Yep. And then to immediately get shackled into corporate America. And then I have this thing that native New Yorkers, I think 9/11 hits people who are from this area a lot harder than maybe it does the rest of the nation, because you just have to live with the trauma of it being right here.
I mean, I was fortunate. I didn't lose anyone. My boyfriend at the time, his temp agency was like down in the World Trade Center.
Oh my God.
So I was like, oh my God, so that was my first thing, but he was fine. He was like running late, like a lot of people were that day. And
my girlfriend's dad stopped to get a bagel when the second plane hit. And then he was like, I'm gonna get back on the train before they shut it down.
Yeah, it was insane. I mean, it's just part of like you said, like it was just part of being a New Yorker, I mean, I had friends that lived down there, and they had to, vacate. Yeah. And it's crazy. Like if they're still doing certain construction around the city that they'll associate with 9/11,
right,
or Hurricane Sandy. And I'm like, these things were years ago, but we still, I mean, it's that kind of damage. But yeah.
Is this the point where you're like, fuck corporate America, I have to be a performer?
That's when it really started. Yeah. So, I got laid off along with 20,000 other people. I made it through
in the Enron scandal.
Yeah. So
Whoa.
I made it through 7 rounds of layoffs. And then, the day I got laid off, I mean, the company was basically like imploding. And then
I've seen that documentary.
I never actually saw it because I was like, I lived it, whatever.
Right. I don't. If you lived, I don't think you need to see it. But wow, just to be in the middle of that. Good Jesus.
It was crazy, and I mean, imagine like going to work every day, knowing that there's no work for you to do, and your managers are basically helping you revise your resume. It's just weird.
Man.
Yeah. So then I got laid off, but I was like thankful. I was miserable. And so then I basically collected unemployment and did spoken word for a year, and that was great until it wasn't.
Yeah.
It got to a point where I felt like it felt too soapboxy after a while. It got to a point where I was like, okay, both for myself and the people that I was performing with, it was kind of like, if I'm so angry about this thing, I should be doing something about it, not just talking about it,
Right.
And then it also happened to be where I was actually performing in Harlem, even though I lived in Hell's Kitchen at the time. I performed a lot with a group called the Hottest Poets, and there were some pro-Farrakhan poets, which essentially meant anti-Semitic.
Right.
And then it got uncomfortable, and I was like, I don't want to be around this crap anymore. So yeah, faded away.
So spoken word fades away, and because again, I'm gonna trace this a little bit, because you're doing what I think what I want to be doing for like myself, because I know you do voiceover and you do like act and stand up and play in a band. I want to see which one of those things begins first. I'm making like a.
I like it. It's like my
finger thing I'm doing.
My biography. Well, so essentially so I started phasing out of the kind of slam poetry scene, and I started getting into more like what I would call miniature one-woman shows. So I hooked up with this guy who played a synthesizer, which became almost like a one-man band.
Yeah.
And I would play my violin and do poetry, and he would play the synthesizer, and I would do a show, and I would do like maybe a 30-minute show in little cafes and things, and I would bring people in, I would promote it. And I mean, I did that probably for another year while I was still kind of figuring everything out.
Yeah.
And then I hooked up with a friend. We started writing songs. We started writing like some like neo soul, R&B, and I would like I would sometimes infuse some of my spoken word into it. And
that's a really good seamless. Those two, I feel, transition kind of into each other.
I believe some of the songs are still on MySpace.
You're sending me a link to that MySpace.
I totally am.
Because anyone who listens to this can't not know what those songs sound like.
Oh yeah. I had a spoken word CD. I don't think that's online anywhere, but I can mail you a copy because that's pretty funny too.
Great. I'm gonna need that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And for the album cover, my friend was a photographer at the time, and I was naked, and we painted me white, like kabuki white, and wrote my poems on me. Oh, you have to laugh at yourself.
You know what I just heard when you said that? I just heard the F train announcer say the next stop is East Houston Street. Because this is like, well, this is early 2000s, not too far removed from the 90s, where I feel this city was just alive with that kind of experimental. Because I mean, that was like
Bowery Poetry
Club, where I saw a guy play saxophone that was a flamethrower. Luna Lounge still happening at the time?
Yeah, there was a little bit of Luna Lounge. My main spots at the time were Bowery, Nuyorican, and Jimmy's Uptown, which was in Harlem. Those were like my three main spots. Mm-hmm. There were other spots that were, like with comedy, but the ones that stick out of my head are those. And Bob Holman was the like artistic director of Bowery, and he loved the avant-garde. So I remember one time, we showed up, my, keyboard player and I, and he had me do spoken word while a Chinese tap dancer performed next to me to my spoken word.
That's too perfect.
Yeah.
That is just too perfect.
I was like, wow.
That is the avant-garde.
Yeah.
That's it's the kind of thing that like I imagine like a sketch comedy writer would think of, but that exists. That's like one of those.
Completely.
That's like one of those things. Like, and I have the same theory about. This is gonna sound like an odd comparison at first, but like genres of pornography. Like, if you just think it probably exists.
Oh, absolutely. No, I dated someone who is an expert in porn, and he showed me every possible porn you could ever think of. Really.
Wow.
My favorite is the superhero porn, though. I really like that.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Yeah, anything you can think of. Star Trek, Star Wars. The Avengers. Anything that.
Okay.
X-Men. There is a porn.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I could see translating a lot of spandex. A lot of a lot of
or
like a lot of things that can
robots, fembots coming alive.
That's a good one. Probably the weirdest thing I ever saw. I heard this on, and then I'll get back on track here. Although I love these little sides.
Stream of consciousness.
Probably the most unusual thing I saw. I heard Bert Kreischer talking about it on his podcast, and he was talking about quicksand porn. And all it is women dressed as superheroes sinking into quicksand. And that's it. It's not there's nobody gets penetrated.
Wow.
Just
so there's no like get it in the hole before it falls in the hole?
No, nothing like that. Just a struggle against the quicksand, and then the quicksand wins.
Yeah, well, that makes me think of two other kinds of porn that I've seen. One is just women blowing out smoke.
From where?
From their mouth.
Okay.
Just taking big, huge vape hits and just blowing them out, very sexy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have seen, and that you did make me think of the other kind where this woman is just very anally talented and just
proficient.
I believe it was Green was the porn that I was watching, and it was just she would put, I guess, hopefully non-toxic green paint up her bum and blow bubbles and make designs, fart out designs and balls and butt plugs.
That could probably
green thing.
Now that you just described. That could occur next to some poetry at the Bowery Poetry Club. I think that would make perfect sense.
That would make perfect sense. Probably at a Burning Man event somewhere that happened.
I'm sure because we've said it will now exist.
I feel like it already happened.
Right, and if
maybe in Brooklyn, actually,
or if you're in the Valley and now you're going to make that, because I do get quite a few downloads from California. If you're in the Valley and you're going to make that. I just want a quick non-speaking role where I just walk through the back and just like, and I just go, weird world we live in. So
I would hope that you were in a white suit and that you would get some of this right.
Right. It's like, oh well, I guess I got to go to the dry cleaners now. Oh, good thing we're filming in one. But it's not open. Darn. I'll have to wait till regular business hours.
Unfortunately.
So how do you get from neo soul to stand up?
Well, let's see. I'll try to give you the elevator version. So I was doing singer-songwriter stuff, had some stuff on MySpace, was actually really trying to do the band thing for a while. It just didn't pan out. So then, and doing temp jobs and kind of trying to find the path. I mean, I quickly realized finance was not for me. So for the past, I don't know, 12 years, I've been an executive assistant, and I've, been able to show myself, prove myself enough that, they let me do what I want. I go on auditions, I can work from home. It's a good situation.
Great.
Thanks. Yeah. So for a year, I did Reiki and collected unemployment as well. But that was a couple of years later. And then I started I was singing, and my friend was like, you know what? I have this great voice teacher. And I met the voice teacher, and she was like, you're awesome. You get this. She's like, I teach a class where I incorporate acting into singing to make the songs more connected and authentic. I really think you should do it. I was like, okay. And I did it, and I fell in love with it. And it was a lot of, I ended up studying the method, which is very kind of Strasberg kind of sense memory, personal recall experience kind of thing.
I'm familiar. That's what we did. Strasberg, Uta Hagen, all the sense memory.
Right. So then I did. I studied at a place called Black Nexus, which is kind of founded by this woman Susan Batson and her son Carl Ford, and it was a very, very fulfilling but very emotionally draining year that I worked on that. And then somewhere in between, I did a one-woman show at the Duplex, and it was kind of about following your dreams, and it was semi-autobiographical.
Perfect.
And everything from boys to playing the violin to boom, finance to boom. And then I started, eventually I actually went to Machu Picchu with a friend of mine, and we were
cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. And we were post kind of hike, of the Inca Trail. And we were just sitting in our hotel, and I was, I don't know, pontificating about, I should really do this. And she's like, could you stop talking about it and just do it? And I was like, okay, I hate you. I love you. And then a couple months later, I had my headshots, and I started auditioning, and I was doing, plays, musical theater. And then I loved musical theater for a long time because it was I get to act and sing and sometimes even play the violin. What? I get to do all the things I love. This is amazing. But then I also, I really enjoyed TV and film, and I was like, this is cool too. So I did some reenactment shows. I mean,
I've seen a couple of the stuff, some stuff on the ID channel.
Oh yeah, Discovery ID and Nat Geo and all these things like Celebrity Ghost Stories. And
no, I watch tons of shows like that, all those docu reenactment shows that make you feel like everyone you love's gonna murder you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I did one where my name was Marcia Kelly, and I had paid my daughter's boyfriend's best friend to kill my husband so I could inherit his insurance money.
Oh.
But
well, what a tangled web we weave.
Yes, actually, I believe the episode was called Twisted Ties.
Perfect. That's perfect name.
But ironically, I did this show called The Jeannie Tate Show. That was Maggie Kakowski and I forgot the other one's name. Maggie Kakowski is married to Bill Hader, and I forgot the woman that played Jeannie Tate is this other woman, and it was I was so green. Like, I was just so excited, like I was on a camera. But I didn't know who any of these... I didn't get how cool it was at the time.
Yeah.
And the episode, they would basically... The premise was Jeannie Tate was a soccer mom who would essentially, like, host a TV show from, like, Curves and from the soccer game and the dry cleaners, right? And on my episode was Lonnie Ross from 30 Rock. And Aubrey Plaza played her daughter. And I remember being like, wow, that girl really doesn't smile, like on or off camera at all. Like, wow. And then
she's very much Aubrey Plaza.
And she's totally like the character that she plays is her. And I was like, and at the time I was like, who is this person? And like, wow, she's really like this. And then boom, you know, Parks and Rec. And I'm like, good for you.
That's cool. That's so funny. Like crazy things. Like, sometimes I just sit back and I think, like Adam Conover. Do you know him? Mm-mm. He has a true TV show called Adam Ruins Everything. Okay. And I really enjoyed the show. And I just like the first time I was going to work one day, and I'm walking through the subway, and I'm like, I see a giant poster of Adam, and I'm like, huh. And then I just got to think, merely a few years ago, we were both doing like an audition set at the Laughing Devil on a Wednesday. And we're just talking about, oh, that joke was good. Or, oh, thanks, man. That joke was good. And I'm just like, how cool is that? Like just that happens.
Yeah.
Like the weird world that exists.
Yeah. That's why like I've stopped trying to, compare and contrast and, think that I have to do X amount of shows and mics per week to succeed or be happy. 'Cause it really can happen anytime. Obviously I have goals and I am busy and driven, but I had to kind of step back and go, I'm going to drive myself insane and I'm not going to enjoy myself anymore. So,
right. That's what I've had to learn too. And the other thing that it was really great for me to learn is that, again, kind of going to be an odd source of reference, but, I was really into the Garfield cartoon when I was a kid.
Okay.
And there was an episode where the super cool chill sheep is singing to Orson because they had these, and then he's saying, hey, there's only two kinds of problems in the world. The ones you can't solve and the ones you can. And there's no problem worrying about the ones you can't solve and no problem worrying about the ones you can. So I interpret that is, I can control what I can control, and I shouldn't freak out about the stuff that I can't. I can take control over, I can email people and do half-hour long sets at places with a friend. I can put out my own podcast. I can write something and then bug my friends, be like, hey, let's do this.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's kind of liberating in a way. And then yes, go and then still submit for stuff, but know that you always have this that they can't take away from you, the fiction, the phantom they.
And I say it to myself, I say it to my friends, it's like the only one putting pressure on me is me.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, I have people who submit me for auditions and things for voiceover and commercials. And, one of them even, kind of has a relationship to like stand up and comedy and stuff. And it's like, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, And,
yeah. And as long as you're loving it, another thing they can't take away from you is just, that's why like when comics get like when there's comics that are like super bitter or like they're like angry about open mics or angry about stand up, and like you don't have to do it.
No, it's so funny. I mean, it's been like a theme, especially the past 2 weeks, where I've literally almost after every show, a friend or an audience member will be like, Rachel, you're so not bitter. Right. How are you a stand-up comic? And I'm like, you don't have to be bitter. I mean, I tell a lot of stories, you know, and
I just what I ultimately come back to is just I love to be on stage, and when I'm doing like my storytelling show, my one man show, I just enjoy reliving the stories so much.
Oh, yeah.
And it's enjoyable for me, and then I'm hoping that I can convey like joy, sorrow, everything that I felt to whoever sees it, and then again, ideally, if more people like it, then it multiplies.
Yeah. I mean, I did a show the other night, and there were 3 people in the audience, and it was like one of the funnest shows I've ever done, because I just talked to them. It was like we did jokes, but we talked to them. We because there was, obviously there were other comics on the show, and there was a stark difference between the people that were like, I'm just going to deliver my jokes. And then the people who were like, yeah, but there's 3 people sitting in front of me. I'm going to like hang out with them and like throw my jokes in the mix. And those are the people that, were just cracking up, and they were like cracking me up. And it was awesome. It was so fun. Yeah.
I love stories like that. Couple things I want to make sure I get in before we close. This has been great, by the way. Thank you for
fun, yeah,
for doing this. A couple of things I'm curious about. I'd love to know. They're probably going to take some time to answer, but I'm curious to know how you got involved with playing with 2/3 Goat, and also this is also just for me personally. I'm very interested in the world of voiceover, and I don't know where to start.
Oh, cool. Okay. My friend, do you know Justin Ulanus?
I don't think so.
He's kind of gotten more into comedic songwriting. That's what he's focusing on nowadays. He and I met through a kind of business for acting class.
Yeah.
And he was actually, so how I really got into stand-up was I was writing a web series that was loosely based on my sex and dating life. And I'm not a screenwriter, hadn't taken a class or anything. And I was working with someone who kind of saw the vision as more Sex in the City, and I saw it more like Broad City / Girls.
Yeah.
And so we just weren't seeing eye to eye. I was getting frustrated. And Justin was like, dude, you have a lot of funny stories that you want to tell. Why don't you try telling them in stand-up? And I was like, oh, okay. So I like took a class at Caroline's, and that was it. I kind of stuck. I was like, oh, I think I'm good at this. I think I like this. And that was that. And so I was so Justin used to do a show at, he called it the Brooklyn Brouhaha.
I feel like I remember that show.
Yeah, it was, they did it at like a beer place, Berry Hall, maybe. Anyway, it's in like Williamsburg, like North Williamsburg area. Nice, big, cool venue. And I did one of the shows there, but I think before that I was just hanging out.
Yeah.
And at the time I was playing with another band called the Booklights. And that was more like kind of indie rock, folk kind of stuff. And the head of that, he plays with a group called The Hollows. So this was like his own kind of project. Anyway,
right.
I had come from rehearsal. First 50 guests at the Brooklyn Brouhaha got free nachos. And Justin's like, sit with my friends, Ryan and Annalise and Jason. And I'm sitting with them, and I'm like, oh my God, guys, I'm really sorry. I haven't eaten. I just had rehearsal. They're like, oh, what do you have rehearsal for? My band's playing at Rockwood on Sunday. They're like, we're playing at Rockwood on Sunday. What do you play? I'm like, oh, I play the fiddle. They're like, shut up. We've been looking for another fiddle player, preferably one who's female, so you could sing backup vocals. And I'm like, oh. So we kind of like dated, like I was like, I'll watch your show if you watch my show. And then we'll see if there's a fit. And we liked each other. And then they were playing a gig at like, what was it? We were scheduled to play like one gig, and they gave me a bunch of music to learn. And they were like, oh, we have an extra gig at, I think it was like Dinosaur Barbecue in Brooklyn. And they were like, just come and play whatever, you've already figured out. And I liked their music so much that I had figured out like almost all of the songs that they had on the set that night. Oh, wow. And they were like, whoa, that's cool. And like, I don't know, it was just a good fit, and I think the person, they had another fiddle player that was kind of an interim guy that was kind of more of just like, he just kept playing. And they liked that I was like, oh, obviously when the singer's singing, I'm going to crop out a little bit. I had
bring it back.
Right. I had probably the sensitivity from like playing an orchestra and like doing other stuff. And then, I was like their substitute, their sub. And then after a while, their primary guy, I used to say, I'm like, we're in a polyamorous relationship.
Right. The main squeeze.
Right. He got really busy because he's super talented. So he plays like, 12 instruments, and he got busy with like musical theater stuff, like down south. They just, they keep hiring him because he can kind of do anything, and he's handsome and he can sing and all that stuff. And so, so then I became the gal, and then, so that's that. And then, voiceover.
Yes. Cause this started last year when I, for my 30th birthday, my girlfriend and I went to Japan. And,
I remember.
And, then it took a few months to germinate when I was like, oh, am I going to become that guy that's really into Japan? But then towards the end, I was like, of 2016, and maybe it's partially subconsciously in reaction to reality being a nightmare. I was like, I'm getting into anime this year. So I'm like, this is what, and I've always loved like cartoons, and like going back to like when I was a kid and I'd watch like Ren and Stimpy.
Oh, I love Ren and Stimpy. Oh.
I was allowed to watch Ren and Stimpy, but not The Simpsons.
Oh,
which I argue is worse.
I was going to say.
Because The Simpsons is like, and I do this joke on stage, The Simpsons is like a nice, a family getting through life. And Ren and Stimpy at its worst is animated domestic violence.
Basically, they're just awful.
Right. Like Ren is just smacking Stimpy around, and Stimpy can't escape. I know that's terrible.
Oh no, it's so true. I was really into Ren and Stimpy, and I also really liked Aeon Flux, and that shit was like porn. It was like
I haven't gotten into Aeon Flux.
Oh my god, it was crazy. It was like they would have these very Aeon Flux in this. I don't remember the character's name, but it was like it's this guy, and they would like make out, but it was like just like so graphic, just like sound effects and water squirting everywhere. And I was probably like 10, and I was like, ooh, that makes me feel funny. It was just like, let me hump the couch,
Let me go find a nice friction surface.
Exactly, basically.
Learn some things.
Oh man. Well, with voiceover, I do commercial voiceover primarily. I started out, yes. No pressure. I actually started out narrating Harlequin novels.
No way.
Yeah. It was through this business for acting class that I used to take, and someone from Audible came in.
Okay.
And, they were like, just, read this copy. And then, we all did it, and they asked certain people from the class to come in. Mm-hmm. And then they, handed me my first book, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, And my first one, it was essentially like vampire porn. And so it was, this chick was a vampire courier. And the reason that she was a vampire courier is because her mom, I believe, drank vamp blood during her pregnancy. So she had this sixth sense of like, when the vampires were like not being cool with her, and she could get out of there real fast.
She wasn't like a full vampire. She was just vampire tuned. No, she had
vamp senses. But she also was like dating this vampire on the down low, and like she had a house, and it was connected to his house by an underground tunnel. I mean,
because society was not accepting of their.
Oh yeah, and it took place in like Santiago,
vampire.
Chile, and so I had to do like a Chilean accent. I mean, it was like very exciting and overwhelming, and sexy.
I imagine so.
Yes, and then the next book that I did was called The Professional. Ranger Jeb Nelson went in, and there was a robbery in a nursing home, and he was screwing the masseuse. I can't even say it with a straight face.
I was like,
and my favorite line
I have
from
a lot
that
of tension in my penis.
Yeah, my favorite line from that book was, "His eyes met her gaze, and heat slithered along his dick." You know how many times I had to say that line, like, get it out without dying? Those engineers, man, they're gods. I'm like, how do you guys get through this? Because, I mean, here's the thing. Audible is owned by Amazon. So every single book that Amazon puts out is put out on Audible. So they're just churning them out.
Wow.
So some of the books, I mean, they're not even really well edited. I mean, I was like revising it as I was going. My favorite one, though, was a lesbian sci-fi porn. That was my favorite.
That one sounds good.
And then I did one that was like just straight up erotica that I actually had to create a pseudonym. Yeah, it was. The book was called Hungry for More.
Right. So if something's too sexy, you're like, I don't know if I want my real name
it was
attached
just beyond.
to all this.
Like the other ones were more like Skinamax, and this was more like,
This is more like this is more like explicit, detailed.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing to you.
Yeah, I mean.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if you really want to listen to it, I can give you my pseudonym offline.
Okay. Sounds good.
Anyway, so to get to my point, so I love doing Audible. I loved audiobooks specifically, but it's very time consuming, and I'm a slow reader, and I personally enjoyed prepping the books ahead of time. And so it was that. So then I met with a coach, this woman, Marla Curbin. She's a former agent from LA.
Okay.
Actually, how I came to her was very kind of airy-fairy kismet. I was working with a friend of mine who does kind of like angelic spirit guide readings, and you can like ask questions and stuff. And I was like, creative stuff. And she goes, voiceover. They want you to do voiceover. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to get around. And she's like, no, now. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and then she was like, Marla Curbin. And I was like, what? And then I called up Marla, and she was like, how'd you find out about me? And I was like, well, you'll either think I'm crazy or, really get it. And she goes, what, did a psychic tell you to come here? And I was like, actually, kind of, yeah. But yeah, I worked with Marla, and I guess between having done the audiobooks and being a musician, she was like, you have a really good feel for this. So we just did one like TV coaching and one radio coaching. Okay. And she gave me a lot of like really powerful tips. And then I recorded my demo with her, which, included like, some marketing advice and meeting with an industry person. And it just so happened that the first lady that I met with, this agency, Take One, she loved me. And she was like, I want to work with you. And I was like, cool. And then she started sending me out, and I like booked my first audition. So it was all very kind of like serendipitous and awesome. And then, I wasn't sure, what things were like. And I heard like that several people worked with multiple representation just to, get more out there. Sure. And so then I also work with this other agency called Baker Management, Baker Talent. And so they kind of, both send me out for things, but it's primarily commercial voiceover. So
so you were able to, from the voiceover and acting classes, did get some legitimate opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, my demo, I've booked work from my demo. It's a really good demo.
I listened to some of it
Thanks.
Now I need a Nokia phone.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff is not real. It's essentially when you make your demo, you work with a person. The one that I use, they custom wrote the copy for me based on what they thought my voice could sell. And then added music and things like that. But, they really range in like, how much money you want to spend and how custom it is. And, I have friends that do it for cheaper that are still professional. I mean, we could talk more in detail offline. But what I will say, and I mean, you do have a great voice.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. It's very like soothing, dad, guy next door. So, but there's probably a lot of people out there that, have that.
Sure. Yeah.
But from what I can tell, the animation approach is different. And
that's what
I can't speak to that, but I could find out for you, because there are people that specialize in that, coaches and casting directors and stuff. I've been sent out for stuff and I have not a clue. I just completely freaking wing it. It's like these Asian, I don't know if it's anime. It's not quite anime. It's more, it reminds me of like a rated G version of like Fist of the North Star, which I know is not, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
not completely.
It was like something I watched as a kid. Well, I mean, we would like smoke blunts and watch it.
Sure.
But, and it was like, Wu-Tang, refers to it in their songs.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was a very cool thing to do.
Groovy.
But, I tried to emulate, a mom's voice. And then at one point I tried to do a kid's voice and I never booked it. So I'm like,
yeah, I have like like if I was going to like, cause there's like my normal speaking voice and then there's my like calm, like radio DJ voice, like for all those lovers out there. And then I could go through like different, I go through mostly it's like just stupid, silly voices to make my girlfriend laugh.
Yeah.
Like just imitating like, the woman who was next to us at a Chinese restaurant is like, I am like ready for that California lifestyle. I'm like really ready because these kids, they're like really into Minecraft. And I'm just like, what is Minecraft? Like, I'll just do that for like 5 minutes until she says, you're an insane person. And, like, mission accomplished.
Well, what I've discovered is they actually really just like paying you for your voice.
Okay.
When it comes to commercial stuff, they don't want impressions. They don't want
that's good too. I'm really good at speaking in my own voice.
Your regular voice is great. And, also I find my comedy has helped both my commercial and voiceover auditions because they like people who do improv and stand-up. Because they're like, oh, you're creative. You can add some cool inflections to this spot that, and just make it sound more fun. I mean, I like had a callback recently for like some, I think it was like Vermont lottery. And like, of course the specs are always so stupid. They're like,
right.
Sound like Melissa McCarthy. And you're like, what does that mean? So they were like, just zany. I'm like,
just like, wow.
Let's go to Vegas. No, it's like, and I got a callback. So go figure. But yeah.
No, this is because now it's like I had nowhere of no direction and now I have some direction. So I really appreciate that, Rachel.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, we can talk more about
sounds
like specific people that I think, do both.
Excellent.
That I know that I can be like, hey, here's my friend Will. And,
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thank you again for doing the show. I really
Thanks for having me. I mean, we got to talk about me for an hour. That was amazing.
That's exactly what I wanted. And we're going to get that rap thing. We're going to make that happen before it's all said and done.
Oh my God. What, my MySpace?
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to hear that. Oh, if you send me that, I should put one of those songs at the end.
Oh my God. You totally can. I won't even attempt to sing it right now, but it's not bad. I mean, it's just, it's so 90s.
It's
so 90s.
What's your show? What can we plug?
Yes. So my monthly show is called The Venus Flytrap. We like to say it's castratingly funny, but everyone walks out intact. But yeah, it's a monthly comedy show I produce at the Lantern. We still do comedy upstairs. And it's on Bleecker Street between Sullivan and Thompson. I co-produce it with my friend Jack the Stripper. She is a professional stripper / writer / stand-up comic. And we love to have a really smart lineup of at least 50% women and smart men. And it's a great show. It's really fun. It's an opportunity to see me and Jack do longer sets. And it's also an opportunity to see a really, talented lineup. Like we don't mess around because it's a monthly show. So it's like, you got to go all out. I want to have some dope comics. this month we have like Kate Moran and Camille Theobald and Tom Coyle, Mike Leibovitz, and a bunch of really cool people. I'm forgetting someone, but I'm almost remembering all of them.
Awesome.
But
and when is that going to be?
So that is Monday, January 30th, 8:00. It is on Facebook. You can also see it on my website, which is rachelgreen.nyc, or you can follow me on any of the other modes, which is the one Rachel Green. So it's the number one, like the word the, and then number one, and then Rachel Green.
Fantastic. And you can send me a link. I'll put it in the description.
Sweet.
Excellent. Thank you, Rachel. All right. Thank you for listening, folks. That's the show for this week. As always, you can check out my website, willcareyisfunny.com. That is CAREY is funny.com for links to my upcoming stand-up shows, including my co-headlining show at the People's Improv Theater February 26th at 8 p.m. and 8:30. Check the description. I'll have links for tickets. You can also follow me on Twitter at ComicWillCarey. And if you want to support the show, feel free to subscribe or rate the show on iTunes. It's greatly appreciated, and it helps me out. And I'll see you folks next week between awesome and disaster. Take care, everyone.